Let's all take a break from street photography and let's all focus on space photography. If you're living under a rock and you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry. So NASA just launched a lunar mission called Artemis II. Artemis II is NASA's historic first crewed mission of the Artemis program, sending a 4-person crew on a high-stakes 10-day lunar flyby. Yes, they sent Fantastic Four up there. The reason why this is so important and the whole world was watching is because the last time humans went to the vicinity of the moon was in 1972, if you believe in the moon landing, that is. 54 years later, here we are sending people back to the moon, but this time we didn't land. This time we just went around the orbit, and the whole purpose of this whole thing was to test if the Orion spacecraft can handle the trip, and it did. So you guys know what the next step is, right? Moon invasion. This is all crazy. We just witnessed a historical moment for humanity. And the craziest part of it all wasn't even the fact that we went to the moon and back, and we just orbited, and all these 4 people came back alive and healthy. The craziest part and the most unbelievable to me is that they chose Nikon cameras to take to the moon. Like, not Sony, not Lumix, not Hasselblad. They brought our beloved potato cameras. But all jokes aside, I really wanted to know why Nikon and what models did they bring up there? And were the photos any good? The 2 camera models that they brought to the mission were the Nikon D5 and the Nikon Z9. The Nikon D5 is a bulky DSLR camera. Now, it was released back in 2016, so it's a 10-year-old camera. Apparently, a big reason why they brought this camera is because it's thick, it has a hardened design, so it shields from high-energy particles, aka cosmic rays, something that a newer, thinner camera wouldn't do. Man, I don't know, I'm not a scientist, but that's what they're claiming. And the second camera that they brought was the Nikon Z9. Now, the Nikon Z9 is a mirrorless camera, unlike the D5, and it was released in 2021, so it's newer, has better features, better specs. And this is the part that it gets really exciting. You know, if NASA brought these 2 cameras out of all the cameras in the world, I don't believe it's because of sponsorship. I don't believe because it's just easy to obtain. You know, they have a lot of budget, so it can bring any camera that they believe or dream or want to bring. So let's dive in on the specs of these 2 cameras so we can learn a little bit more about them. So the Nikon D5 is a DSLR, like we said before, and the Z9 is a mirrorless. The sensor resolution for the D5 is 20.8 megapixel, and the Z9 is 45.7 megapixel. The D5 has the processor of X-Speed 5, and the Z9 has X-Speed 7. The max ISO for the D5 is 102,400. This will be important to know. And the Nikon Z9 has a max ISO of 25,600. The D5 records 4K 30 and the Z9 is 8K at 30 FPS. And another important spec is the battery life, which is 3,680 shots for the D5 and only 740 shots for the Z9. The specs are really important to know because once we start looking at the photos that they brought back from the mission, we will see why they picked this camera and why they look the way that they look. So let's take a look at these beautiful, amazing photos. The first photo that I'd like to start, just so we can kick this off, is that the lunar flyby observation by astronaut Victor Glover. This photo is so cool and so candid. It reminds me of street photography, you know, but instead of hippies with cameras going out in the streets and taking photos of people, we have engineers and pilots taking photos of their crew in space. Man, this is so crazy. And we can see this photo is really, really grainy, is because it was taken with a very high ISO and it was taken on the Z9. So we get to see finally the Z9 in action up in space. The first mirrorless camera in space, if I'm not mistaken, you know, like a consumer grade mirrorless camera. We also got this really cool photo of our astronaut Jeremy Hansen taking photos with a Nikon D5. So this photo was also taken with the Nikon Z9 and of course high ISO, 10,000 ISO, and they're using the 35mm for these photos so far that I've shown you. So it's really interesting seeing how they behave and how they're using these lenses up there. But now let's take a look at this one. This is our first lunar photo of the day. Absolutely stunning, beautiful. This is called Earthset. It is taken with a D5, but it is a tribute to a very famous photo taken by the Apollo 11 spacecraft crew, the Earthrise one. Now, the Earthrise photo was taken with film, and this one is digital, so it's really cool seeing them how different they are and how, you know, film can be a little bit easier to see and a little bit more neat, and then the digital can struggle a little bit in space, but so far that's what it looks like. This one has to be one of my favorites. This is the Edge of Two Worlds. Man, the nice composition of having, you know, Earth looking like a moon, you know, on this crescent shape, and then we have this big rock that we call moon on the left. These photos are, man, they're stunning. If we zoom in on the moon, we get to see all these little holes and pinholes and craters, big craters that have been washed out, and then, you know, deeper ones. Man, absolutely stunning. I've been saying man this whole time for, wow. This photo was shot in 1/1000 shutter speed, ISO 400 on our infamous Nikon D5 with a 210mm focal length. That's why the moon is really big and the Earth is somewhat, you know, bigger. Actually, if someone were to take a photo from the lunar surface up in the sky, it would be, you know, 4 times bigger than our moon, but it would still be relatively tiny, the size of a coin, if we were to stand on the lunar surface. So if you see these photos of a bigger Earth, it's not what it would look like if you were to stand there. It's just because they're using, you know, tighter focal lengths. This one is a historic one. Artemis II in eclipse. The reason why this is such a big deal is because we always seen eclipses from the Earth, and the crew actually saw it from their spacecraft, and the moon was super big that it blocked the sun from their perspective, and this is the time that they lost contact with the Earth and the space station, and they were in a 40-minute blackout with no communications. It's really interesting to see how beautiful the composition is. Man, these are engineers, these are pilots, and the photos came out just stunning, just stunning. If we look at the data for this photo was shot in 35mm at f2 with an ISO of 1600. And this is actually shot on a Z9 instead of the D5s that we've been seeing this whole time. This one was shot in the Z9. If we see really, really close, we can see that it's really, really grainy, but you can see how unperfect and how weird the shape of the moon is. It's not a perfect circle like the Earth looks from the space and from the telescopes and the space station. The moon is actually filled with deformities that you can clearly see once you zoom in on this photo. You get to see the full silhouette of the moon from the other side. And you have this ray of the sun behind it and all these stars around. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. A very important photo too is the Earth from the perspective of Artemis II. This one is a very important one. This one's called Earth from the perspective of the Artemis II. What's really interesting about this photo is that we can compare to another photo shot by the Apollo 17 crew. And if we put these two side by side, you can tell that the Apollo 17 one that was shot in 1972 is way more appealing to the eye and beautiful and less grainy than the most recent 2026 photo of the Earth from their perspective. And the reason is this photo is being taken and being captured in the side of the Earth that is not being reflected by the sun's light. So they had to bump up the ISO to 51,000. So what you're looking at is a photo at 51,000 ISO. If I'm not mistaken, the exposure time is 1/4. So 1/4 of a second. This is why it's very, very grainy. If we zoom in, we see a lot of grain. We see it's very grayed out and not very vibrant compared to the Apollo 17 one. The Apollo 17 was shot on film, but the Artemis II photo was shot, absolutely testing the full capability of the sensitivity of the Nikon D5. That's why when we looked at the specs earlier in this video, I want to highlight the 102,000 ISO, because this is why they needed the D5 on board. They needed a camera that could take photos at a very high ISO to capture and document things. Nevertheless, it's a beautiful photo. Even though it's grainy, it's still historical, it's still beautiful, and it's going to be the wallpaper of many. This one is your classic moon photo, but it was taken, up close with an 80mm lens. It was also taken with the Nikon D5 at 1/500th of a second, aperture 5.6, and the ISO is 400. So we get to see that this image is very, very clear. It's a little overexposed in the middle, but you get to see everything very neatly. And we get to zoom in and have this nice high quality photo of the moon. We can see all the craters, and I love the silhouette of the other craters on the left side being eaten away by the darkness of space. Now, they had to expose for the face of the moon, so that's why you can't see stars here, because they had to shoot in such a lower ISO that suddenly all of the other lights in space are not that visible. It's as if I were to shine a big key light on someone and have to expose their face so that you could only see where the light is hitting, and then everything else in the background would be just, it would be dark and you wouldn't be able to see. And our last photo that we're going to look is called Eclipsed, a View from Orion. Now, this one is interesting because it was not shot on a Nikon. It was actually shot on a GoPro Hero 4. Man, I have a GoPro Hero 4 still. It's somewhere here and I don't use it. And these guys brought a GoPro Hero 4 all the way to space. You guys can see that the quality is not the best. It is very grainy. It's not sharp, but that's because it's shooting at its maximum capacity. I mean, it's using ISO 800, which is not that bad. The aperture is 2.8, but the exposure time is for 5 seconds. So that's why it's not perfectly sharp. That explains a lot why this picture looks the way it is. But no matter how specs-wise crappy this may seem, it is a beautiful documentary photo. Wow, man. I mean, it's one of the ones that were eye-catching to me, especially you get to see this shiny metal thingy on the top here, and then you get to see the sun kind of arraying from the back of the moon. It's just absolutely beautiful. I made this video because I want to share with you guys something that I've been obsessed about, and it was this mission, seeing these engineers and pilots going all the way to the moon and back and bringing cameras. And you guys can tell by the title of this channel, I absolutely love cameras. So getting to see the behind the scenes of them taking photos and getting to know the settings and the models and the lens they used, this is really, really fun to me. So I decided to share with you guys because some of you guys may not even know that they brought these cameras to space. And if you guys are very curious to see what kind of settings and what kind of cameras and what kind of lenses, you guys have to go to images.nasa.gov. That's the website that you can download the full quality image of the photos that they took, and you get to see the EXIF files, which will tell you all the information that you need to know about the settings and how they took the photo. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. This was a little different type of video that I usually do, but I just love everything about cameras. If you guys love cameras, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and just share a little bit of the feedback. But thank you so much. Falou, galera. Fique com Deus e até mais.